Welcome to Movie Recap, a channel dedicated to those addicted to movies. Our focus is to showcase the best recap of your favorite flick. Sit back, grab your popcorn and get ready to be amazed by It, Chapter 2. After being vanquished by the Losers Club, the terrifying clown Pennywise makes a reappearance 27 years later to terrify Derry, Maine. The childhood buddies are now grown-ups, and they have long ago parted ways. However, Hanlon summons the others home for a last stand when individuals begin to vanish. Scars from the past have damaged the group of losers, and now they must face their worst fears in order to eliminate the much more powerful shape-shifting Pennywise. Spoilers ahead. In 1989, the movie premieres. Bill Denbrough, Ben Hanscom, Beverly Marsh, Richie Tozier, Eddie Kaspbrak, Stanley Uris, and Mike Hanlon are the members of the Losers Club. Shortly after Bev defeats Pennywise, the group gets together and she tells the boys about the vision she saw of them all as adults when they confronted Pennywise. In case they have to face it again, the losers arrange a blood pact to go back to Derry. A couple, Adrian Mellon and Don Haggerty, are having a great time at the carnival 27 years later in 2016, when they are accosted by homophobic thugs. The thugs even follow them as they leave the carnival and begin to savagely attack them. Adrian is thrown over the bridge and they take off into the darkness. Adrian is dragged out of the water just as he is about to drown, but Pennywise was the one who did the pulling. Don looks on in horror as Adrian is grabbed by the monstrous clown, who then takes a large bite out of his chest. When Mike gets to the location, he finds the words, "Come home," painted in blood on the side of the bridge. He overhears a police scanner report about the tragedy. Mike is aware that It is back. Despite his success as a writer and screenwriter in his marriage to Audra, Bill is often informed that his storylines don't have happy endings. Eddie, a risk analyst, is wed to Myra. Even though he lives alone, Ben has lost weight and is a successful architect. Richie performs comedy stand-up. A partner in an accounting firm is Stanley. Bev is a fashion designer who has an abusive marriage to Tom Rogan. When Mike phones everyone, they don't identify him right away until he says he's from Derry. The phone call unnerves everyone a little, and Mike gestures for them to come back to Derry. Tom is suspicious and believes Bev is lying to him and cheating on him because he heard Mike's name, even though Bev tells him she will be going back to Derry to see friends. Before Bev can defend herself and flee their house, Tom begins to attack her. Stanley is the only one who stays behind because he kills himself by slashing his wrists in the bathtub rather than confront the trauma he experienced as a child. A flashback reveals that Mike shoved the insane bully Henry Bowers down the well, but he survived and emerged from the sewers. When he got back home, the police had him under custody because they had found Henry's father's body and assumed he had killed him. Henry is at a mental health facility these days and has gotten much crazier. Henry receives a visit from Pennywise, who takes the shape of a zombie Patrick Hockstetter and gives him his old knife. After a protracted break, the losers reunite in the Jade of the Orient restaurant to catch up. They remember and joke about, but they also talk about Stanley's absence. When they begin dividing the fortune cookies, they discover that each one contains a single word that contains a complete message. The combined fortunes read, "Guess Stanley could not cut it," with Bev's reading, "Stanley." Pennywise is aware that he has located the losers. Then the fortune cookies begin to break open, revealing grotesque tiny spider-like monsters. When other people witness the losers hitting them on the table, it simply makes them appear insane. Bev calls Stanley's wife outside the restaurant. Bev finds out that Stanley was discovered in a bathtub before she can explain what happened, and the other males deduce what happened to him. When they all get together at the hotel where they are staying, Mike admits that this is the true reason he called them all back to Derry. When they question Bev about how she knew how Stanley died, she responds that since she was the only one to see the deadlights when Pennywise took her, she has seen how everyone dies. After Bill returns to Mike's residence, Mike gives him a medication in his water to make him see psychedelic images. Mike reveals that during his entire stay in Derry, he has researched the history of it and learned about the Chud ritual, a Native American ceremony that may be used to permanently destroy it from a Native American tribe. He creates an item of ritualistic pottery that shows the ceremony in action. When they get it back to the other losers, Mike tells them that in order to defeat Pennywise, they must collect childhood relics and put them in the pottery. A young child named Victoria is seen watching a football game with her mother somewhere in Derry. A firefly entices Victoria to follow it and she eventually encounters Pennywise beneath the bleachers. When he sobs about not having friends, he plays on her pity by using the same deceptive technique to make her believe he is amusing. Victoria gets teased because of a blemish on her cheek. Victoria is ultimately consumed by Pennywise, who first swears to make it disappear. The losers visit an ancient clubhouse that Ben built for them throughout the summer, during which time they all grew close. There, they discover a shower cap, an artifact for Stanley. In a flashback, Stanley asks them all as children if they'll still be friends as adults. His friends gave him their word that they would. As they return to their Derry homes, the gang disbands. Bev visits her former residence and pays a visit to the ailing Mrs. Kirsch. While Bev looks around, she invites her inside for tea and cookies. She discovers the poetry Ben wrote for her, but she still believes Bill wrote it, along with an old carton of smokes. Bev is sitting with Mrs. Kirsch when the elderly woman acts strangely. Bev discovers something on Mrs. Kirsch's chest that appears to be decaying flesh. She tells Bev that her father went into show business. Bev notices something in an old photo that appears to be a human Pennywise. Bev is then asked by Mrs. Kirsch if she is still Daddy's little girl, as her father had referred to her. As she assumes a hideous and terrifying form and drives Bev away, the elderly woman is suddenly revealed to be Pennywise. Bev sees Pennywise in human form as Bob Gray. Before she escapes, he is taunting her by scratching the red lines on his face while sporting clown makeup. Richie visits a former arcade he frequented as a child and retrieves a token to use as his relic. When Richie is playing a game with Henry's cousin in a flashback, then, adult Richie is discovered and subjected to torture by Pennywise. Bill finds his vintage bike for sale when he visits an antique store. "Can I buy this bike?" he asks the store owner. Bill's work is acknowledged by the owner, who concurs that his endings are terrible. Bill grabs the bike and rides around his former street, going past the sewer where Georgie was left. Using Georgie's specter beckoning to him from the sewers, Pennywise plays tricks on Bill. The giant clown nearly draws Bill in. The group had seen Dean at the restaurant. Ben receives a vintage yearbook page, on which Bev was the lone writer. Because Pennywise knew that Ben loved Bev and still feels the same way about her, Pennywise was in the locker with Ben when her form's head caught fire. Ben was hiding in there. Eddie heads to the drugstore to get his prescription filled. Mr. Keene, the creep, and Greta are still employed there. Henry breaks out of the facility by killing a guard. After locating the losers, he stabs Eddie in the cheek as an attack. Though not fatally, he stabs Henry in the chest with the knife and flees to his buddies for assistance. But Henry escapes once more before being apprehended. Henry finds Mike in the library, where he strikes him. Henry is stabbed in the back of the head by Richie shortly after he arrives and kills him. Richie throws up as a result. After getting back together with his pals, Bill swears he will kill it. To confront the evil force one final time, his friends assemble their relics and meet him at the Neibolt house. They enter Pennywise's lair during their stay and start the ceremony using the pottery. Bev's poem, Ben's yearbook page, Richie's token, Eddie's inhaler, the boat that Bill and Georgie helped build, and a rock that Mike found after their rock fight with the Bowers gang are among the relics that the losers toss in. The deadlights emerge and disappear into the ceramics containing the artifacts, but just when it looks like everything is working, a crimson balloon that, like Pennywise, appears. He declares that he has been waiting a very long time to meet the losers again and turns to face them in his actual form, a giant spider that still sports his clown face. Mike goes on to say that the tribe that tried the ceremony on Pennywise perished themselves and that the ritual never succeeded. When Pennywise sets up 3 doors labeled "Scary, Very Scary," and "Not Scary at All," when the losers approach close enough to battle Pennywise, Eddie finds the guts to take a swing at the clown himself. But as Eddie rushes to Richie, Pennywise stabs him with one of his claws. As the losers look for a way out, they assume that since Pennywise is a spider, he can shrink himself in an attempt to pursue them. Then they rapidly discover that forcing him to believe he is small is the only method to reduce him to a size small enough to beat him. Before Pennywise shrinks and shrivels into a helpless shell of his former self, they start to yell at him and call out all of his other innocuous forms. This gives the losers the opportunity to take his heart from his chest and crush it, permanently destroying him. Around them, the lair starts to disintegrate and collapse. Eddie is dead when Richie tries to free him. The house crumbles on itself, and the losers flee from it. The 5 that are left make their way to the quarry where they used to swim. They consider Eddie and how disgusted he would have been by its filth. The others comfort Richie as he begins to mourn for his departed comrade. Ben plants a kiss on Bev as they swim on. Afterwards, as they stroll home, they catch a glimpse of Eddie and Stanley as children in their reflections in a window. In a last flashback, the trio is seen riding their bikes home as children. Later, after returning to his writing, Bill believes that his conclusions are becoming more compelling. He talks to Mike over the phone as he considers visiting the outside world for the first time. They declare their love for one another, and Mike brings up a letter that the losers have been receiving. When Bill receives his letter, he discovers it was written by Stanley just before he committed suicide. Over a brief montage of the other losers in the present, we hear his voice reading the letter. Richie visits a bridge where he carved his and Eddie's initials, indicating that he was in love with him, and discovers that Ben and Bev are now dating. According to Stanley's letter, he eliminated himself from the picture so that his friends might commemorate him and gather the will to battle it, knowing full well that he would never have the courage to face Pennywise again. It proved that he was correct. Mike finally leaves Derry by driving off in the film's epilogue. We really hope you enjoyed today's recap, It, Chapter 2. Please leave a comment below of what you loved about the movie and why. Be sure to like the video and please don't forget to support our channel by subscribing so you don't miss any amazing content. Until next time, lights, camera, action. We look forward to seeing you in our next video.